Greg Schiano has Rutgers in the thick of a Big Ten race, at least technically. And the last 2 weekends have been vintage Rutgers football under Schiano. 3-point wins against Washington and Virginia Tech, games decided in the final minute. We got Steve Merrill on the line from Wager Talk. Steve stops by here at the Voice of College Football each and every week to break down the biggest games across America. Steve, Rutgers going to Lincoln to take on Nebraska. Of course, despite the coaching change from Scott Frost to Matt Rule, still not shaking that one-score bugaboo of losing all those close games, and they did so 2 weeks ago against Illinois in overtime. So it's Rutgers getting 7 at Nebraska.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Schiano is a great coach. I think he's overachieved. That's what I look for in college basketball, college football, are coaches that do very well as an underdog, close games. I think that you mentioned that's an excellent point also. So that angle does concern you a little bit with Nebraska in this game. Let's start, though, with my simulation. 10,000 games simulated through my model. On average, I've got Nebraska winning by 8. So it's pretty much near the line. Currently 7 in most locations. There were a few 6.5s floating around earlier this week, but it's pretty much 7 across the board. Obviously, that's a very key number. If you could still find a 6.5 or less, I would maybe look at Nebraska. There are a lot of -7s, -105, which means it's still more likely to go back down to 6.5 than the other way. So there's a little bit of line value there. And then the situation probably is not great for Rutgers. You talked about that Friday night emotional national TV game at home over Washington. It closed as low as a pick'em, actually. Money came in on the Huskies in that one, so Rutgers did cover. Rutgers pretty fortunate to win, though, if you look at the yardage. Now, there were no turnovers in the game, but Rutgers gave up over 500 yards to Washington. They barely gained. They gained under 300, I believe, on like 290-something. So on paper, probably should have been a Washington win, at least statistically. So maybe Rutgers a little overrated now. They were also, some close wins, like you mentioned, the week before. So back-to-back 3-point wins against Virginia Tech and Washington, and now traveling to, once again, an unfamiliar setting for the most part, as Rutgers is a newer member of the Big Ten over the years. So I think this is a good setup for Nebraska, and at 7 or less, especially at 6.5 or less, we get a little bit of line value as well.
Question for you, Steve. When you say, okay, the model comes back after the 10,000 simulations at Nebraska by 8, the line 7. To me, that says stay away.
Yeah.
But how have you ever tracked how much your percentage increases based on how many points separate from the point spread your simulation is?
Yeah, and you have to be careful, too, because almost all the times when we're talking about those big favorites, we did on some of the other team channels, almost always my simulation favors the big favorites. With that said, they've been great money makers, as you know, over the last few years. I've used those exclusively this season. I'm currently ranked number 1 for this year at Wager Talk. I think 11-5 start to college football, and probably over half of those have been 3, 4, 5 touchdown favorites in September. So the model does sometimes favor the bigger favorites, but it also has been winning doing that. And also, as you get to bigger numbers, a 5-point difference between, say, 23 and 28, obviously, it's not nearly as consequential as a 5-point difference between like -4 to -9, or even crossing the key number of 3. So you have to dig a little bit deeper than just looking at the variance between. But yes, as you get more value, the model does do well, which is what you want to see. And you're right. The difference between 8 and 7, that's not going to make me play Nebraska. But what I do use this for, just like I do with all my other handicapping techniques, including my NFL Fade the Public information, which I do a video on Wager Talk, is as a filter. It might get you on a game that you're borderline on using, or it might keep you off a play that you're borderline on using when it goes the other way. So it's just one of the many filters I use is to start with a line value starting point. But keep in mind, you can like a situation all day long, but if the line is not there, you can't make the play. So I'll look at all the games, I analyze them, I like particular sides, and then I run them. When the model's done running, it takes several days. If the line value is there with the situational analysis, that's enough to make it a best bet.
Love to go behind the curtain and get those kind of nuggets from Steve. And you can get so much more than that at wagertalk.com. Check out Steve's page. Again, wagertalk.com. And then the exclusive under the radar selection for us. We appreciate that here at the Voice of College Football. And you get that as a YouTube premium member on the main channel, or as you see on the ticker down below, patreon.com/MarkRogersTV to lock in on Steve's under the radar selection each and every week. College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.